Okay, let's dive into this stack of sources you've provided. This is a really fascinating topic. We're tackling something that, well, kind of silently shapes so much of how we see things, how the media portrays crime. I mean, think about it. For most of us, our knowledge of crime doesn't really come from personal experience, does it? It's mainly from newspapers, television, social media these days. So the big question is, what picture is the media really painting for us? What's the mission sort of for this deep dive? I think it's to understand that picture and, well, its impact, its profound impact on how we feel about safety and risk.
Absolutely. And what's truly fascinating here, looking at these sources, is how they immediately point towards a distorted picture. That's the term that keeps coming up.
Distorted. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to explore how certain types of crime get massively overrepresented. You see them all the time.
Right.
While others, they're almost invisible. And this leads, to a public fear that's often, frankly, out of proportion to the actual real risks out there.
And what's particularly compelling, I think, is that we'll also look at why this happens, how it can sometimes ignite something called a moral panic. We'll definitely unpack that.
Yes.
And even get into a really complex question of whether the media actually, causes crime.
That old chestnut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when these sources talk about this distorted picture, what specifically are they highlighting? What are the biggest areas of misrepresentation?
Well, the primary point, overwhelmingly, is a massive overrepresentation of violent and sexual crime.
Okay, the really dramatic stuff.
Precisely. The focus makes these awful events seem far, far more common than they actually are in, daily life. It's always about the sensational, isn't it?
Yeah.
The isolated, dramatic incidents rather than the everyday, maybe more mundane offenses that actually happen more frequently.
That's a powerful point about what gets the spotlight. But then what gets pushed into the shadows, what gets ignored.
Right. Well, at the same time, the media tends to dramatically underrepresent things like white-collar crime and corporate crime.
Okay, so define that a bit more. What falls under that umbrella generally?
Sure. Basically, we're talking about non-violent crimes committed in professional or business settings, often for financial gain, fraud, embezzlement.
Right, money related.
Exactly. Or sometimes it's through corporate negligence that ends up causing harm, maybe environmental damage or unsafe products.
Okay, things you rarely see leading the 6 o'clock news.
You almost never see headlines about complex tax evasion schemes or illegal environmental damage, do you?
No.
Even though these things can cause far more widespread systemic harm to society as a whole. So the selective focus, it really does skew our perception and, like you said, leads to this public fear that often just doesn't line up with the actual risks we face day to day.
So if the media is painting this skewed picture, how does that public fear actually take shape? How does it manifest? The sources point pretty strongly to one of the most powerful concepts here, the moral panic.
Ah, yes. Stanley Cohen.
Exactly. Stanley Cohen's classic study. Mods and rockers, right, from the 60s. It feels like an almost timeless blueprint for how these things emerge and, well, escalate.
It really is. And what's so insightful about Cohen's work is how he showed that when the media reported on what were initially seemingly minor scuffles between these two youth groups.
Yeah, mogs and rockers on the beaches.
Right. They didn't just report it, they sensationalized it. Big headlines, dramatic language.
Okay.
And that sensationalism, rather than just informing people, it actually became a catalyst. It spurred on the very societal reaction it claimed to just be describing.
So it wasn't just reflecting reality, it was shaping it.
Exactly, a kind of self-reinforcing loop. And that basic mechanism is still profoundly relevant today, with different groups or issues.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack this blueprint a bit more. Cohen laid out stages, didn't he?
He did. It often starts first with a group or maybe an activity being defined by the media or parts of the media as a significant threat to societal values.
Right, framing it as a problem.
Then comes the sensationalized media reporting we talked about, often using, dramatic headlines, maybe exaggerating the scale or the violence involved.
Got it. Stage 1, threat identified. Stage 2, media blows it up. What's next?
Well, this media attention often prompts what Cohen called moral entrepreneurs to step in.
Moral entrepreneurs? Like who?
Think politicians, maybe prominent community leaders, religious figures sometimes, people who take a strong public stance condemning the group or the behavior.
Okay, so they amplify the concern.
They do. And their condemnation often leads to increased public pressure for action which can then translate into, say, increased policing focused on that group or calls for tougher sentences.
Right, the authorities get involved more heavily.
Exactly. And here's the crucial next step where it can really spiral. This official crackdown, this increased attention, ironically, can isolate the group even further.
How so?
Well, it can push them into behaving more like the label they've been given. Cohen called it deviancy amplification. The reaction actually makes the problem seem worse.
Ah, so it becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. The reaction fuels the very thing people were worried about.
Precisely. It really shows the media isn't just a passive mirror reflecting crime. It can be an active participant in, well, creating and amplifying deviance through its reaction and portrayal.
Wow. That's quite a powerful dynamic.
It is. And this entire dynamic, it naturally raises that really important question that sociologists have wrestled with for ages. Does the media actually cause crime directly?
Yeah, the big causation question, it's complex, isn't it? The sources seem pretty clear. There are no easy yes or no answers here.
Definitely not.
I mean, some studies do suggest that seeing media portrayals of violence, maybe particularly for young people, might lead to some imitation. Copycat acts, perhaps.
Right, there's that angle. Or maybe just desensitizing people to violence over time, making it seem more normal.
Yeah, that too. But the sources also stress these are often correlations, right? It's hard to definitively prove direct causation. Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one caused the other.
Precisely. And I think what's often overlooked in that more simplistic discussion is that most sociological evidence points to a much more nuanced conclusion.
Okay, so what's the nuance?
Well, the link between media consumption and actually committing crime, it isn't really direct in the sense of watching something and then immediately going out and becoming a criminal. That's generally not how it works.
So it's not like a switch being flipped.
Not usually, no. The media's main impact, according to most research, seems to be less about direct causation of criminal acts and much more about shaping our collective perceptions of crime.
Ah, okay.
Stirring up fear, influencing public opinion, and maybe contributing to those moral panics we just discussed. It shapes the response to crime more than the crime itself.
Okay, so it's less about directly inspiring individuals to commit criminal acts.
Right.
And much more about influencing how we as a society understand crime, how we react to it, maybe even how policies get shaped around it.
Exactly. It shifts the focus, doesn't it? From thinking about individual pathology, why did that person do that bad thing, to the broader societal impact of how crime is framed and discussed.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. It's about the social construction of crime, in a way.
Very much so.
So, okay, let's try and pull this together. What does this all mean for you, the listener? We've seen pretty clearly how the media often presents a sensationalized, sometimes quite distorted image of crime.
Massively overrepresenting the violent and sexual stuff.
Right. While often underrepresenting those white-collar and corporate crimes, things like tax evasion or, illegal environmental damage, which might actually affect more people.
Yeah, the less visually dramatic but potentially more harmful stuff.
We've also unpacked that really powerful concept of moral panics, using Stanley Cohen's classic study of the mods and rockers as a kind of case study.
Yeah, seeing how media sensationalism can actually amplify deviance through that multi-stage process, identifying a threat, blowing it up, moral entrepreneurs stepping in, crackdown, and then that deviancy amplification loop.
And we've touched upon that tricky debate about whether the media causes crime directly,
Right.
concluding that while most sociological evidence suggests its main impact isn't really about making people into criminals.
No, it's more about shaping public perception, shaping fear, and influencing how society reacts.
Okay, so connecting this to the bigger picture, what's the final takeaway?
Well, I think if we connect all these dots, this deep dive really highlights the immense power of the media. It doesn't just report on reality, it actively helps to shape our social reality, particularly around crime and safety. And this raises, I think, a really important question for you, the listener, to reflect on. Now that you understand a bit more about how the media's lens works, how its focus can be selective and sometimes distorting, how will that change what you choose to focus on? Or maybe how you interpret what you see and read in the news moving forward? Yeah.
What stands out to you now about the subtle, or maybe not so subtle ways, the media might be influencing your own perception of safety and risk in the world around you? Something to think about.